If you want to help Myth Vision Podcast grow, you can join our Patreon. There are different tiers, as well as help out with PayPal. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Question from Derek Bennett. Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob has suggested that the Gospels probably stem from the 2nd century. I'd like to hear his reasoning for this, or for thinking so.
Well, I've gone over this a bunch of times too, but I don't mind doing it again. Mark, which does seem to me to be the earliest gospel, presupposes several delays of the parousia. There are some this generation will not pass away. Whoever said that figured in their generation that it would happen, but it didn't. So you have elsewhere in Mark, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the kingdom. Then by editorial placement of the transfiguration, it's pretty obvious that someone is trying to substitute a non-eschatological fulfillment, because that didn't happen either. So what could the disciples have seen that might be construed as the coming of the kingdom? And only some of them. Jesus took Peter, James, and John up the mountain to see him transformed. Is that a foretaste of the kingdom? It doesn't say so. Matthew doesn't even seem to think so. He just uses it to say Jesus is the new Moses. But why does he take only the 3? Doesn't say. It's just that fits the saying. And then you've got in the apocalyptic discourse, in the form we now read it, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, the other's going to happen, but don't get upset because it's not yet. So at one point, these are the signs to watch out for, but no, they don't herald the immediate coming. You still have more things, and here they are. It's exactly like 2 Thessalonians. Don't you realize this and that and the other thing have to happen? It's not going to happen immediately. It's the same reasoning. And then it says in Mark, again, Mark 13, that the gospel must be preached to the whole world. How long is that going to take? It seems to me that's another way of pushing it off. Is Mark written around 70 for all of that to happen? It seems to me, no, this places it a good bit later. Also, if Hermann Dettering is right, and I think it's a pretty good argument, Mark 13 as a whole is based on, as Timothy Colani argued, I think in the 19th century, the little apocalypse theory, that this pamphlet that somebody in Jerusalem circulated on the eve of the Roman siege, that when you see this and that, you better get your butt out of there and head for the hills. That later on, that was preserved by insertion into a simpler story where the disciples are gawking at the huge buildings of the temple, like a bunch of Galilean hicks. And Jesus says, oh, you find that impressive? Well, look at them while you can, fellas, because soon not one stone will be left on another. What? When is this going to happen? And the original response was, no one knows the day or the hour, not the angels, not the Son, only the Father. So that it was simply about the destruction of Jerusalem. But since this tract was also about that, though without an eschatological dimension, that was sewn into it. By the way, just as Revelation chapter 11, the little scroll, was stitched into the book of Revelation, where it doesn't exactly fit. It's talking about the great beast who hasn't even been introduced yet. He's introduced 2 chapters later. So it's the same sort of thing. There's a real analogy there. Okay, so Mark used it, but Dettering says Matthew probably had it. I mean, they didn't burn all the copies after Mark used it. No reason to think so anyway. Matthew had it and preferred it and used the original version, which is interesting because Matthew's version fits the history of the events around the fall of Jerusalem better than Mark's. And he goes into each one and where it's attested or not attested. And he said if Mark's originally, the one he used before he redacted it, was like that, then that it's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem in Bar Kokhba's time, 132, whatever it was, then Mark is using something that was written already in the first third of the second century. So it seems to me you've got definite reason to push it into the second century. There's no, plus the Gospels are not attested textually. The most you've got is some stuff that sounds kind of like them in First Clement and in Justin Martyr, but it's not direct quotes. Okay, Luke is just filled with stuff about the delay of the parousia. To throw cold water on what some of his disciples are saying as they approach Jerusalem, he told the story of the king that goes far away to be invested as king, and it's a long time before he gets back and has his enemies slaughtered and rewards the good guys. When the Pharisees ask, when's the kingdom of God going to come? He says, it's not going to come that way. The kingdom of God is within. What the heck? How'd this happen? Acts chapter 1. Lord, is this the time where you're going to restore sovereignty to Israel? That's none of your business. Just go out and preach. I mean, this is a definite pattern. There's some standing here who will not taste death till they see the kingdom of God come in power, Mark and Matthew say. In Luke, they chop off in power because that is used at least 2 other times in the New Testament to refer to the resurrection of the dead. And, no, that's not going to happen in any time soon. And so forth. And it's already, like Mark is in the rearview mirror already, and there have been several Gospels, all of which Luke is trying to supersede. And the whole thing, Conselman points out that in Luke and Acts you have a real sea change, that now what Jesus did was to stop, to bring to a conclusion a dispensation, which is to be replaced by the church age. So that's going to need some time. The Gospel of John is all about realized eschatology. Lord, what has happened that you'll reveal yourself to us and not to the whole world? I thought it was every eye shall see him. No. Lord, I know my brother will rise at the resurrection of the last day. Whoopee. Does me a lot of good now. And he says, no, I am the resurrection. In chapter 6, I think it is, he says, don't be surprised if I say that the hour is coming, and now is, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. Now, the ecclesiastical redactor has paraphrased that a little later in the same chapter to say, and the dead in their graves, those who were literally dead, will hear the voice of God and come forth to face his reward or punishment. These things don't mean nothing. You can't just say where there's smoke, there's no fire. It just seems that the... and it just seems to me that the whole idea of having abandoned a literal second coming, which John seems to have done originally, that seems to imply there's a lot of water under the bridge, and even the tradition says that it was written around the end of the 1st century. But of course, all the older scholars were really apologists who were trying to come up with a plausible date for the Gospels as early as they could, and there's just no reason to do that. Whereas, with Luke, there's all kinds of other stuff, analogies with the infancy Gospels, the Hellenistic novels, and the apocryphal Gospels, and so forth. It seems pretty plain to me that you're dealing with a second century work in all of these cases.
Is there a specific book that you've written on this particular?
Well, I know I have an appendix to Killing History, that critique of O'Reilly's Killing Jesus. One of the appendices is all about that, but I think I deal with that also in my introductions to the Gospels in the pre-Nicene New Testament, and also in Holy Fable Volume 2 about the Gospels and Acts.